we'd like to give a big thanks to Sirui for sending us these lenses for this comparison. Now before we start, we do want to mention that we are filming this video right now on the IronStar 60mm lens so you can have a look at what it looks like. This video is going to be mostly a comparison, but we will go through some of the specs as an overview as well as our initial thoughts on the image coming out of these lenses. All of our testing today has been done on the Panasonic S1II shooting 8K B-RAW at 17:9, and we were filming the lenses at their widest open aperture as well as stop down to t2.8. Now, a quick note as well is that although the Blazar lenses that we have for this comparison do compare quite nicely, the 35mm that we have is not the full frame 33mm, but we are going to show the full frame coverage in any case because it does nearly cover full frame. Just note that when you are shooting with that lens on a Super 35 camera, it has a lot less of that swimming on the sides. Now, in comparison, these lenses are actually quite different both in the hand and on camera. Starting with the similarities though, both of these lens sets cover full frame, they're 1.5x stretch, and they do have a consistent squeeze ratio. Things stay the same when you're focusing. They are also both around T2, with the Blazars being a T2 except for the wider lenses, and the 100mm I think is a T2.8 and so is the 85, and the IronStars are a T1.9. Now there will be more lenses coming in the IronStar range, but we don't know quite where those aperture markings are going to sit just yet. Both sets do come with interchangeable EF and PL mounts, and they are both shimmable. Neither of them came particularly well shimmed from the factory. We also want to mention quickly that while all of these lenses have been shimmed on a lens projector, which is something we normally do for our anamorphic videos on this channel, we do want to note that we've actually had a little bit of trouble shimming these lenses in particular compared to a lot of the other lenses that we look at, but we have done our best here. We're not quite sure why that is, and we will probably go into that a little bit more in our full review coming up soon. In terms of flaring, the IronStars come with a neutral, amber, or blue flare. We've got the neutrals here today, which is our preference typically. The Blazars, however, have come with a blue and amber, but I think right now they're only shipping in the silver flare variants. Our set is amber, except for our 35, which is neutral. They're just the only ones that we have on hand for the testing. To be fair though to Blazar, most of their flaring is fairly neutral anyways. It just sort of leans one way or the other if you have the blue or the amber versions in our experience. The build quality on both sets is quite good, with the Siruis being a little bit more interesting in terms of their design, and they are obviously quite a bit bigger, although I wouldn't say they're too much heavier in the hand. But if you are going to be flying your lenses on gimbals and stuff like that, the Blazars are probably going to be the way that you're going to lean. Now in terms of your front filtration, the IronStars have 92mm filter threads, and the fronts are 95mm, which is perfect for most cinema clamp-on matte boxes, and it's the size that I wish more lenses were. When it comes to the Blazars, you have a 77mm filter thread, and the fronts are 80mm for matte boxes, so you will probably need adapter donuts, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it does keep them nice and small. The last thing that we do want to mention in terms of these lenses' design is probably to do with how the anamorphic elements are laid out. With the Blazars, we have a slightly more typical front anamorphic, and the lenses have been designed with quite a lot of character in mind to give you much swirlier bokeh and to emphasize that anamorphic look even though they're only 1.5x. This is something similar to what we see with the Atlas Mercury lenses, just to make these lenses look a little bit more characterful than they would otherwise. In comparison, the Siruis seem to be a mid-anamorphic design. Now this means that combined with the 1.5x squeeze, you're just not going to get as much anamorphic character as you will with a front anamorphic. That's not all bad though. There are advantages to doing it either way, and it's really going to be up to you as to which you prefer. Now, starting with the IronStar lenses, what we see here is that both wide open and stop down, they are a little bit sharper than the Blazars, although we will probably say that your shimming mileage will vary. I do want to mention that the Siruis have a lot less chromatic aberration in the bokeh balls in the background, which I actually think looks a lot more high-end. And given that these lenses are about the same price, that is one of the things that you're trading off if you're going with the Blazar over the Siruis. Now when it comes to flaring, Taylor and I both agree that the Siruis here have some of the nicest, if not the nicest flaring on budget anamorphics that we have personally seen. There's lots of stuff going on, it's quite complex, and it just looks stunning. Now they're not perfect, there are a couple of extra elements here, and in some of the focal lengths we do see some green secondary flares, but overall we're really happy with the performance here. They've done really well with flaring. Now in terms of distortion, we can see that the Siruis are quite well controlled and in fact lean a little bit pincushion, which is going to be a little bit hot and cold depending on your preferences. And keep in mind, this is something that you can change in post with a little bit of lens correction. In terms of close focus, they are quite similar to the Blazars, and we do probably think that you are going to want to look at getting a set of diopters if you pick these up. It's also worth noting that performance of the Blazars in close focus when you're using a diopter is better because we find that focus at minimums gets quite a bit softer on the Blazars, so you might actually want to pick up a set even if you don't think you'll need them because your sharpness will improve when you're focusing very close. Now, when it comes to flaring, we find that the Blazars are a little bit all over the place. Now, that is because we have a mixed set, but it is very obvious to us that the 35mm flares very beautifully, whereas the others get a little bit streaky, more like an Anamorphic modded lens with a streak filter, compared to more complex flares that we see in higher budget anamorphic lenses. It's all subjective, and we don't think that these are terrible, but we do think that there is room for improvement here. Needless to say, though, that this is one category that Taylor and I think the IronStars blow the Blazars out of the water. In terms of distortion, what we see on the Blazars is a lot of beautiful barrel distortion, but there's also quite a lot of fishbowl effect or swimming on the wider lenses. This is something that is going to be subjective to taste, and these things are somewhat correctable in post if you don't like them, but that is probably one of the biggest differences here, is that the Blazars have that barrel distortion and crazy character, whereas the Siruis are quite clean. Feel free to make your own conclusions and let us know what you think down below, but for us, we think that these are both interesting options. They have very different looks, and they're both going to scratch and itch depending on which way you look at it. For example, if you are doing more commercial work and you just kind of want the squeeze and the lens flares, the Siruis may be a better option for you. However, if you are looking for more of that vintage anamorphic goodness, the Blazars might have your back, even though you might have to sacrifice a little bit of sharpness to get there. It's also worth keeping in mind that the Blazars have been on the market for a lot longer, so you might be able to get a deal for a used set, but also there are a lot more focal lengths available. And the Remus B set, consisting of the other focal lengths, is actually a bit sharper than the A set in practice. So something to think about. But anyway, that just about does it here for us today. Those are our opinions. We quite like both of these, and we're quite excited to keep testing these lenses here. If you like either of these lens sets, we'll leave links down in the description. And hey, if you disagree with anything we've said here, why don't you leave your thoughts down there as well? We will read them, I promise. Anyways, that's about it for us today. We'll see you next time.